One thing that I've learned too, as an actor and a young actor, is that every actor you work with is an equal. They're no more famous than you are. They're no whatever. You cannot look at them as famous people. They're your peer. You're working. You're bringing this project to life, and you're infusing it with your energy.
You are part of our history in Hollywood. You've been around a long time. You also led Nosotros for a while to help Latinos move forward. What made you want to take that political stance? You had a very good acting career. You were working all the time. What made you say, I think I need to be here now?
Maybe I wasn't thinking properly. But on a serious side of things, I've always been active one way or another in terms of helping and being a part of the collective, because we're all in this together, whether we're Puerto Rican, Cuban, it makes no difference. We play the same roles. And I've played Puerto Ricans, I've played Cubans, I've played Mexicans, I've played Chicanos, as well as lawyers, doctors, etc. We're actors. And when you stop and look at how we're not making headway, when I see guys like myself who get starring roles and they don't break out, and yet you'll see someone gets a major role in a film or something, and the next thing you know, that person is doing 5, 6, 7 movies in a row. And you go, well, what's the difference? And I'm not saying because he's white or because he's black or because he's brown. There was something missing that obviously I didn't have, or at least I thought, having starred in a major movie and a major television. It was one of the biggest. The Deadly Tower was one of the top rated movies in the year it came out. So you stop to think and you doubt yourself, but you start to realize, well, what can I do? How can I make change? And Ricardo Montalban started this organization I was doing at the time in 1968. That's when I started as an actor in Canción de la Raza, Song of the People, and we did 65 live episodes. I saw what Ricardo was doing, and I became part of that group in 1969.
And this was Nosotros?
This was Nosotros,
wow.
Its beginnings. And all the major actors that I knew at the time, Fernando Lamas, Ricardo, and some of the older character actors were now part of this group. But there were no younger people. So I felt, well, he called and he said, hey, come on down, let's try and do this. And I said, okay. And I remember even back then it was A. Martinez, myself, and some other actors that joined forces with the older elite, so to speak, that I grew up watching. You help in many ways. There were roles that would come my way and I would turn them down because they weren't something that made me feel good about myself. So, I did not partake. And there were several movies that came that way too. But I would always look at other actors and say, hey, why aren't you at this interview? They would come and participate. And it didn't bother me if they got the part, because it's not my part until I get it. So the more we shared, the more I felt it was important. But unfortunately, it wasn't reciprocal. So I never got the share from other actors.
How did you become the president of Nosotros?
Oh, the president of Nosotros. Well, I was always active in Nosotros,
okay.
In many different ways. And I saw a void at that time and felt that I could give myself, there was some name recognition at that point, and the organization was down to 0. At that point, they only had 90 members. Not that I felt I was all that important, but I felt I could do something. And at that point, I built it up to 400 members afterwards, once I became president. I had a different agenda. Because then I was thinking of production. How can we help each other, writers, directors, producers, not just actors? Because at that point also, I was chair of the Latino Writers Committee at the Writers Guild. I was there for 2 years. And then I became a board member of the Screen Actors Guild for 8 years, working to support the talent that wasn't getting their voices heard. There were very few ethnic members on the board of directors at that time. I started the African American committee, the Latino Hispanic community, because at that time there were these words you had to say in order, to be appropriate, to give people an opportunity to come together and help themselves voice their needs and then interface with the board of directors. Well, many of the chairs that I appointed became board members, and that had never happened. So,
Wow.
Yeah, that was a while back, but of course, everything goes back to zero.
So was Nosotros the starting point for you to just start pulling from different places and going, this is what we need? Or
No, it was way before that. I was doing it on the periphery, on other elements. The most maligned ethnic group, if you want to call it, that we have in this country that doesn't get their just due is the Native American.
so, Richard, you are one of the most generous people that I have met in this industry. From the very beginning, when I met you, and I met you in the 80s, the late 80s, after Stand and Deliver, what I love about you and I appreciate about you is that you are inclusive of everybody. Your skew, your take on stuff is refreshing, because that's how I was taught. I was taught you help everybody. I met you when you started at Nosotros as president, and how not only active you were, but how much you were about embracing everybody and saying we're all part of this. Not a lot of people can do that. Not a lot of people are willing to do it. As you said earlier, you could share with actors breakdowns and things that are coming out, and they say thank you, but how many people actually call you back and say, hey Richard, there's a part I think you would be right for it? What is that in you? Because there's a certain integrity, there's a certain conviction that you have regarding the business that we don't hear a lot of people talk about.
It's very simple for me. It's called familia. We all talk about, hey, we're part of something bigger, and we are, but people forget, no matter where we come from or what our original culture is, we're all the same. We're all playing the same roles. We're all representing each other. When I leave my house, I'm representing you. I'm representing not only my family, my if I'm married, or my children. I do have a daughter, and I want them to be proud of me. I want them to say, I want to be like that person, and that's the responsibility we have. A lot of people don't care. They don't care, and when I hear people on the street using foul language in Spanish, it irks me. It's not my job to go up to them and say, hey, look, there are children here. Then I just get into a fight, and it's not worth it. I think we have a responsibility, not only to ourselves, but to the children that we have and to their children, because this is going to live on beyond us. And I try and apply that to who I am as an actor when I go in for a role, when I used to, as I don't anymore. I don't like to audition, never liked to audition. I don't have an agent, I don't have a manager. If somebody wants to hire me, send me the script, I'll look at it. If it's something I feel I can contribute, I'll do it. How much? Because it is a business.
Yes,
regardless.
it is.
But it's family. We are family. And I'm not tribal. I'm not for Mexicans. I'm not for Chicanos. I'm not for Cubans. I'm not for Puerto Ricans. I'm for all of us. Because that's happened in our industry. All of a sudden, you have factions now. The Cubans go that way. Puerto Ricans go this way. Guatemalans go that way. And I'm going, wait a minute, guys. We're all doing the same roles. You're playing a Mexican. I'm playing a Cuban. Come on, it is crazy, and we're hurting ourselves.
What was one of the biggest aha moments you got as the president of Nosotros? In a good way.
Thank you.
How about in a good way?
In a good way. Well, actually, it wasn't when I was president. I was already doing starring roles here and there on television and so forth. And they were getting ready to do a 2-hour police story called A River of Promises. It was actually called American Me first.
Oh, wow.
And then they changed the title, and then, of course, Eddie did his movie. I get a call from my agent, and he says, it was Paul Conier's office, and they said, you got to go to Colombia right away. But I'm on my way to the beach. I had my overalls and all this other stuff. We were going to go, and I said, okay. So I told my wife at the time, Roxanne, we have to go to Colombia. I said, okay. So I get there, and I see everybody, this usual suspects. And I'm going, wow, we only get sides. They don't send scripts. Eventually I got scripts many times, but in this instance, it's a major role. Well, apparently it had already been cast, but Jerry Velasco interceded, put himself on the line and Nosotros on the line, and said, no, forcefully to the point where they said, okay, because they were going to hire another actor, James Ferrantino, who's an excellent performer, Broadway, and I worked with him eventually. He wasn't representing the character to its fullest in terms of the Mexican American aspect of who he was. So I know that's kind of stupid because an actor's an actor, yes, but not necessarily so, because we never had
Well,
that
it's
opportunity.
very complex.
Well, we don't have that
Yeah,
opportunity
yeah.
to play ourselves,
Right,
and here was a
right,
chance.
right.
And Jerry, luckily, was strong enough and committed enough to put his foot down and forcefully apply his take on it. And right there and then, after we did our readings or whatever, and I was ready to leave, the casting director called me. He said, "No, stay." I said, "Okay." Well, before I knew it, I had already gotten the role, even though there were still people outside. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
I've been through that too, where all of a sudden somebody gets the role and we're still there auditioning, and I'm going, wait a minute, that's not fair. I knew then that I was going to be doing this role, and then I had to come back and read for the leading lady that they were going to choose. But that was an aha moment. It showed me that if we are together, and if we really understand who we are and the power we have, and that we're right, things could change. And he did that.
Let's switch gears for a minute and talk about acting. How did you get started?
Oh, boy. That's an interesting story. Well, I was in the United States Navy. My mom died, so my dad took us to Mexico. And there I was in Mexico, stranded. So then I came back at 17. And my dad says, "What are you going to do with your life?" I said, "Well, I don't know." He says, "Well, join the Navy, 20 years, you retire, you got your pension, you can do anything you want." Well, I was only 17. I said, "Well, the Navy, Vietnam?" And yes, he said, "Yeah." So I did. And so I got out when I was 21. I decided not to stay in for 20 years because it wasn't something I wanted to do. And I always had this thing in my head about acting, even though I didn't know what acting was. Because I grew up watching black and white television as a little kid in the 50s. And I was singing, I was playing the guitar and singing on board ship and so forth. I was going to college, East Los Angeles College, taking business administration because I figured I was going to have to take care of all my money. I was going to make a lot of money, still waiting to make that money. But the priest, who looked more like a movie star than anybody else I knew in the day, I told him I'd like to start a theater group. And he says, "Well, I have a little group. Why don't you come and talk to them at the pizza parlor around the corner?" I said, "Okay." So the nighttime came, "Bring your guitar." I did. I sang a couple of songs, and I told them what I wanted to do, and they promptly said no. Okay, it wasn't on their agenda. But a young lady from the group called and said, Marcela de la Torre, and she called. She said, "Richard, look, I'm working at PBS, and we're doing this thing, and they're going to teach people how to perform because we're doing this series, and we're going to create our own actors." Oh, I said, fine. So I went back to college and I got some guys, and there were like 5 of us who went to these classes. And they turned out to be teachers, real teachers. But
Real acting teachers.
No, they were actually real teachers.
Oh.
But they were also actors. So I started, and interestingly enough, it was one of those publicity stunts where nobody was used in the series. But I didn't want it to die. So I started a 501c3 and started the Mexican American Theater Workshop in 1968. And so now I was teaching acting. How presumptuous of me. And there was another guy who was classically trained. His name was Mario Aniov. So he and I were teaching, and we were doing all kinds of stuff. There was a boathouse there, and we had the upstairs, we did the classes. Well, lo and behold, I got called by Abel Franco. Well, I didn't get called by Abel Franco, but by Charles Polachek, who was the executive producer of everything. And they hired me as the youngest member of the family at that time. Years later, Abel Franco, I know you know Abel, he was the head writer. And he said, "Do you know how you got that job?" This was like 20 years later. And I go, "No." We had a huelga. A huelga is a strike. And we said, "You hire Richard, you put him in the cast. We're going to write for him." Because I was the only one that actually survived from that. And from that, the only one who kept going. Of course, my older brother was Emilio Delgado, who was on Sesame Street. My ex-wife, Priscilla Garcia, played my older sister. And so it was an interesting thing. We did 65 live episodes. back then, and none of
Wow.
it survived,
Wow.
unfortunately. Yeah, but that's how I started, and then I got an agent, and then from there, my first job, I think, I was in Encyclopedia Britannica, and then the Lucy Show with Lucille Ball, and Buddy Rich was the guest star, and I played a little Chicano drummer, and then it just went on from there. Marcus Welby, The Man in the City with Anthony Quinn, and so it just kept going.
Then you started doing a lot of it. You did a lot of episodics.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your presidency at Nosotros. The challenges that you faced, you did a lot of good work. You created a supportive community that had dried up after Jerry Velasco left. You started infusing the organization again. You brought in people. It started to have a life again.
Yes.
What was your wish for it, and what actually happened with it? Because after you left, it kind of went back to dust.
And I don't want to disparage Jerry in any way. It wasn't his fault that things just happened. So when I took over, we were down to like 90 members of some sort, and a lot of infighting.
But Jerry had been gone a long time by then. Wasn't he gone already?
Yeah, a lot of people left at
Yeah.
that point. It was down to bare bones and people who had been infighting, and certain people took over that had other agendas and not that of the organization. So I felt I could do something, and that's why I ran. What I thought, again, coming back to concept of family, we're a family. So the idea was to infuse the organization with working actors, because at that point there weren't any more working actors involved with the organization, and that basically dissipated the efforts, because how could we represent neophyte actors without having working actors involved? Because it's an industry. I came up with this concept of ambassadorships, and I would start reaching out to Efraín Figueroa, to other people, and then members on the board and other things started taking exception to that. Why do they have cards that designate them as ambassadors? I said, because they represent us. They're working actors. And I'll send them to a school. I'll send them to that school, this school, and so forth, etc. And it started to build. And then people wanted to be a part of the organization.
You also reached out to the embassy for Spain.
Oh, yeah.
Because we did, I just had the flash,
Yes, right.
that we did an event with Pedro Almodovar when he did the Women on the Verge.
Almodovar, yes.
Yes, on the Verge. And
Yeah.
and we all got together. I just remember it was a party.
Well, what happened was I had already gone to Spain because I was dealing with USC. They had a film program there that I was meeting all of these directors, producers, and so forth from Spain. So I went to Spain and I started meeting other people. When I became, again at that time, president of Nosotros, I reached out for them, and it became an intercambio cultural, so to speak. I also reached out to the American GI Forum, and we did one of our first meetings was a joint meeting. They had their meeting in Texas while we were having ours. I was in Texas, and the vice president, and we were on the telephone, and we did a joint meeting on that level. So I was trying
Back before Skype.
Yes, way before Skype. But the idea was how to bring us together, because I looked at American GI Forum as a support entity. If we created films, if we needed to boycott, if we needed to have a voice.
And what exactly is American GI Forum?
American GI Forum was formed by Dr. Hector Garcia just after the war, World War II, on the behest of the community, because there was a young man named Longoria who had been killed in the Philippines in 1946, I believe it was, after the war was over. But remember, the Japanese were still entrenched, and a sniper killed him. And this was after the war. But his wife wanted to bury him in Three Rivers, Texas, and she went to the mortuary, and the guy says, "No, you're Mexican American. You're Mexican American. You're on the other side of the tracks." And she says, "He fought for and gave his life for this country. I want to bury him here. He deserves that." And the guy said, "I'm sorry, ma'am, I can't do that." And so she called Dr. Garcia, who was in El Paso at the time, and he's a whole different story. And he and Gus Garcia, a lawyer, got together and they challenged the city of Three Rivers, Texas, and they were challenged by the rednecks and so forth, the entrenched culture of that Texas concept of Mexicans here and that's your side of town and so forth. It was coming to a head. Well, from that, eventually they had to bury him in Arlington National Cemetery on the behest of Senator Johnston and Bankston. Johnston eventually became president. They diffused the problem, but Dr. Garcia started the American GI Forum to help soldiers coming back from war because they were facing discrimination in this country as they were coming back, as they had fought so valiantly. Latinos make up the most decorated Medal of Honor recipients as a whole. So he created that, and they were up to, I think, 500,000 members. So my brain said, wow, if they become part of us and we say, listen, we need letters to go out, we need your support, this guy has this movie, would you buy the video, and that kind of a thing. So that's how I was thinking, and I'm still thinking that way because it's a family. I saw all of this working as a circle within a circle. What's the center of the circle? It's the producer, the so-called guy or woman who has the idea, who then finds the writer.
Right.
Then there's the production unit. Then there is the acting unit. And then there is promotion and marketing. But it starts in the center and comes out. Well, I wanted Nosotros to be that animal. So I brought in the Writers Guild, the Directors Guild, the SAG. We were now bringing those people in to give us discussions because there was a Latino contingency of directors. There was the Writers Guild because I was part of the Writers Guild at that time. And of course, I had already also had been interfacing with the board of directors, and within the board of directors, while I was on, I started a dialogue with the Producers Association and the Latinos to create this diversity.
Yes.
Because if you recall, back then, we only met with casting directors.
Right.
Off time, a casting director will call you in and say, hi, Lydia,
Right.
what are you doing?
Right.
Bring your new photo and so forth. They used to do that at Universal.
Right, the generals.
Yeah. Well, I said, listen, the biggest problem is producers don't know who we are. So I went to the Producers Guild as a group, and I said, on your off time, why don't you start meeting actors? Because I know, and it happened to me, producers will call the casting directors and bring Richard in. That guy with a funny name.
Absolutely.
That's how it started, because they couldn't pronounce my name.
Right.
But they give me the guy with the funny name, and boom, there I was. But it was the producer.
Right.
They called me in.
Right.
That the casting director had to follow orders. Not that the casting director didn't know who I was, but that's how it went. That's where the Screen Actors Guild can help. But you need a voice within the Screen Actors Guild to move them in that direction. There was a time when I had so many friends who had no agents because they were ethnic. How do you do that? I called the agency and I said, hey, my name is Richard Yñiguez. I'm on the board of the Screen Actors. At that time, I was national chair of the EEO. So I was New York, Los Angeles. So I had a little bit more clout. And they would say, yeah, Richard, of course. Yes, I know who you are. Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, sure. Just tell them to come on in, and you sent them. People who I knew for years had been in the industry and didn't have agents at the time.
So within Nosotros, you tried to create this thing, and it didn't take off. It didn't.
Well, because then it became infighting. Then it became somebody wanted to control the writers. Somebody wanted to control the producers. Somebody wanted to take advantage of that for their own benefit.
So this is wonderful. It's about collaboration. One of the things that I've learned from being part of all these different groups is if everybody is not on the same page, that is what you're going to end up with. You're going to get everybody fighting because their vision is different from your vision. Knowing what you know now, reverse engineering, how would you start that today? Like, how would you create a new Nosotros? Knowing what you know now, bringing in all the information that you've lived and you've experienced.
If I was 20 years younger and had the gumption to do something like that, it can work. The problem is, and I'm strong. I'm a strong individual, so I had to appoint those people in those positions. The sad part about it is that those people decided, you're strong, but I'm going to be stronger. You're not going to have a say anymore. And at that point, that's when it all fell apart. You have to get people who are not only leaders, but followers. And if you can't follow, then you're going to destroy something that can work. You're placing your direction from a directive that was already set. When you get a good business head on and you delegate and you get people that you know are going to make your idea better, you come to that person who started it and you say, look, I think this we can go in this direction faster, better. But they didn't do that. They just took it. Today, it can still work, but the focus has to be not on the benefit of the individual, but on the collective. Because you have all these writers over here complaining that they have no opportunity. You have these producers over here saying, I can't get in the door. You have these directors saying, look at all these shows, and they're not calling me to direct. So you need somebody who can set up the machine that says, okay, we're going to push these people a little harder, but you've got to trust each other to stand by and allow that ideological concept to move forward. But nobody's willing to do that because I'm an individual. I don't need you.
It's just finding that team that is about the vision.
Yeah.
And not about the end. I mean, I think
It
that's...
is, ultimately it is the individual because that's who we're fighting for.
I mean, if you look at Cesar Chavez,
Yes.
it was never about Caesar.
Right.
It was always about the farmers.
Right.
It was always about giving them better. He rose because he was about the people. Martin Luther King rose because he was about the people. It was never, that to me is a great leader, is someone who is steady with the mission, steady with the vision, and can keep it going and making sure that the people that are working with him is mindful of it's about the vision. It's not about you. You will get yours, but this is what it's about. And we move as a collective to get there. It's that mission statement to
Right.
keep honoring the mission statement to get to where you have to go.
And I had that.
Yeah, and as you were saying something, I was reminded about Shonda Rhimes. I had seen an interview she did with Oprah, and I use it now all the time, vetting the right people. What she does, or what she said she did, was they call everybody to find out about that person before they bring that person in. They're not looking for the most talented, they're looking for team players. Because they believe that out of that the talent will shine. They don't want, a diva to come in and knock the production out. In my head, it's like, okay, that's how you move forward. So before I bring people in, to vet them, look in their social media, see what kind of stuff they're talking about, because what they put in their social media today is really what they represent.
Yes,
what they
of course.
represent.
Yes.
I'm sorry that they were not nice people.
I call them bad apples,
But I think
unfortunately.
I think within that there's incredible information that comes forward. It's like we fail forward. If we're paying attention, we just fell forward. It's like, okay, how do you make the machine better? Okay, now we know it's that Edison, I didn't fail. I just learned 1,000 ways not to make a light bulb.
But see, you're the first person who's asked me. Most people don't care.
Oh, I care. I want to know. I think that's how we grow.
Most people don't care. And since they don't know, they fall into the same trap over and over again.
I think with collaboration as artists, we haven't been taught how to collaborate properly. We haven't been taught that even though you and I are friends, we may not be able to work together. So we have to know, okay, we're going to make this brown table. And we have to be clear on the color of the table first. We have to sign an agreement so that we can stay there. As opposed to, I'll work with you, we work together, and then down the line something happens and money now may be involved. So I don't want you, Richard, because you didn't really help me. I want that. And
correct.
And I think as artists, we don't do that. We don't sign the paper first, make our mission statement so that we're clear. This is what we're doing. We've decided we're doing a brown table. And this is the brown that's going on the table. And if we change that, we have to be in agreement. You can't wait till I go home and then change it to a different brown because you think it's better. I think we haven't been taught those skills,
Right.
and we need to learn them, because as artists, you only have you, right? And so you're trying to do the best art you can based on what you have internally. But when you're a collaboration, it has to be more focused on the vision. The individual has to take a back seat. And I think that's where we get in trouble sometimes. So I appreciate this conversation because I think it's necessary.
You're absolutely correct, because basically it's also job description. When you bring people in, you've got to let them know what the parameters of their job description is, because then they start going all over the place, and you have it on record saying, this is what you do, this is what we're expecting. And even though they're not getting a salary or anything like that, they have to understand that that's the wall. Unfortunately, that's where Trump put it, but that's where we find ourselves in this industry. We have to stop complaining. We have to stop and expecting them to give us
Those
the
damn
opportunity.
people.
It's their industry, it's not ours.
Right.
We have to create our own industry. I've said this all along. You're doing it. You've created your own industry. You've created your niche, your way in the world.
Well, because what I learned early on was that it wasn't my industry, that I wasn't being asked to play certain things. I had to fight for what I did get to do, but understanding that I can't tell you how to operate in your house. No matter how much yelling I do, it's your house. So if I want to do stuff, I have to do it. I can't rely on you, and I can't wait for... I didn't come out here to sit by the phone and wait for somebody to call me. That was... from day one. I was going to studios, dropping off my pictures and resumes. I was writing notes to the producers because I realized early on that the casting director did not have the power. They were doing a job that was assigned to them, that it was the producers. And as I've gotten older and gotten into more rooms, what I've learned is that really in our business, where the power starts is in those stockholder meetings at those studios. That's where it is. It's not even about the producers. The stockholders dictate what kind of projects they want to see, and then the heads of the studios start turning. Okay, you want more women? You want more women in action adventure films? Let's get more women, because by the time we get the scripts, it's already almost a done deal. If you can take your money and invest in stocks in the studios and go to those stockholder meetings, that's the power. It's not their game, it's your game. You're really making an impact. When I got out here in the 70s, in the late 70s, and there were all these pushes, God bless Jerry Velasco and Dolores Cantu and all those people who really helped us a lot get into those rooms. From then to today, it's a whole different ball game. If you want to be a part of it, you have to own stock at the table. You can't come in as an outsider telling people what to do. You have to have a voice in the stockholder meeting. So I learned that by going to some stockholder meetings at Warner Brothers and seeing how they changed the landscape. They dictated. And when they spoke, those stockholders, old white people, the next year, that stuff had been implemented when they came to the next stockholder meeting.
Well, I agree and disagree. I agree that stockholders are very important, and they do wield a lot of power based on the business. But the change comes from revenue. It's what film made the money. Why did it make the money? Black Panther right now is at the top of its game. It grossed more money than any other film in history, and not because it was black.
Because it made the money.
Because it made the money, but it made the money because it was a movie for everybody. See, we keep forgetting.
Right. It was universal.
Exactly. You sat there and you wanted to be that
Same
hero.
Same thing with Crazy Rich Asians.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect. But now they're at the table because now they want to repeat that. This is one thing about this industry. Oh, that works. Oh, we got to get ours. We got to get ours going now.
Right.
Boom, boom, boom. The next thing you know, there's going to be
Right, but
a
as
ton.
stockholders, you can come in and say, we want to cater to, and I agree, it is about revenue. Look, if we are stockholders in those meetings, we can affect change in a greater way. We can say, this is what you want to bring in there.
But remember, in a stockholders meeting, you've got more than one stockholder. They have to vote. Let's say Latinos.
You're
If
bringing
they can't
in-
prove
you're
that
bringing in-
that there's an audience that's going to buy that film, that they're going to, I don't care what the stockholders say. They're not going to say, well, we want Lydia there because we like Lydia. The producers are going to go, but Lydia's not bringing any money. What movie did she make? What is she doing? The stockholders go, I don't care. We want her in there. They may acquiesce and say, okay, well, let's try Lydia. But it's really about, what are you bringing to that table?
Absolutely.
And it's the
Absolutely.
money. It is the money.
Absolutely, but if you can steer, I'm not disputing you. I'm just saying.
You're fighting me. I can tell
I
right
just
now. I'm
want
getting
to
despondent.
just
I
Richard.
can see it.
I've seen these stockholders ask for the most mundane things, and it got done.
I'm sure.
It got done. Nobody knew about whether it was going to make money or not, but they spoke. There was nobody protesting in those stock. They just said, this is what we want. And it was change, whereas we worked too hard to try to get crumbs from the table.
Yes.
I think that's really my point. It's like, if we really want to be part of the game, how we affect it is to come as a stockholder and not to beg for crumbs at the table to say, we want diversity, we want inclusion, and they still don't know how that really works and what to really do with us. And there hasn't been any leadership voices who were cohesive, that were not threatening them, but saying, here's a plan, here's an action plan for you to follow. It's going to work.
We're not thinking about our own audience. We're only thinking about, oh, they have that show. We've got to focus on them keeping that show. Instead of us thinking, well, what is this producer doing? What is that writer doing? What is that director doing? We have to have a slew of concepts ready to go.
Right, have a slate that we could present.
But it also, how many of us are approaching people who have venture capital? How many of us are actually sitting down with Netflix, with Hulu, with YouTube? That's where we're lacking, and we need that kind of opportunity to talk among ourselves and say, okay, how can we help each other? We're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're afraid of each other because I don't want you to make it, it's mine.
Yeah.
I'm going to make it.
Right.
What?
Right.
I got the better project.
Right.
They're going to give me $10 million to do this. Oh, no, not her. No, please. My project's better. That's the infighting that goes on, that avarice element within us. In fact, I did that once. Some guy came to me, he says he had $75,000. And I was working on projects, but I didn't have one ready that I could use $75,000. So there was another guy that I knew, I was in Nosotros, and I said, well, give him the money. And that guy came in, did his movie, and then turns out that the money was actually from the mafia, and I didn't know that. So,
but it got put to good use.
He did his movie, though.
There you go. It got put to good use.
And I saw the video in a 99-cent store once, and I'm going, holy moly. And people I knew were in it and so forth. But the fact is, he got it made.
Yes.
He sat down, he and his
Yes.
wife, and they put it together, boom, 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 because he was ready. I wasn't ready.
And that's the other thing.
But I could have
have
stopped
to
it.
be ready.
Yeah, but I could have just said, no, it's mine. I'm going to keep
Yes.
that money and not make
Yes.
anything and hold back. And you can't do that. You have to come together as a family. And when you trust, then you trust that that person is going to move forward because they're ready, that they're going to take you with them.
I think the word family has to get taken out of the equation, because families are dysfunctional sometimes, and sometimes families
Yes,
will
I know.
cut your throat.
Yes, that's true.
But a consortium of people that come together and make things happen. You know, a collective. We come together, we make things happen, we respect each other, and we come in the name of business. How do we move this business? Because at the end of the day, we're talking about business. We're talking about making money. How do you make money? How do you merge
I think
all of it
the
together?
only way you can do that is if you have the purse strings, because then people respect you. Because then all of a sudden that consortium says, oh, that's the person that can say yay or
Right.
nay. Green light this project.
Right. And
You
if
know.
we have certain people who can bring money to the table, that they're continually infusing the organization with money, then you have something substantial that you
Right,
can
right.
you can do. So enough of that porquería. Let's talk about acting. Because
Yes.
one of the things that I love is when you act on a film set or a movie set, that there's stuff to learn, and I want to know what you have learned from actors along your way that you use, or you share with people. Like when you first came in and we were talking and you said, I'm going to look at you from this eye so I can get that camera.
The eye closest
yes.
to the lens is the eye you look at. And I learned that early on. I would think it was a cinematographer who told me, because there's always that opportunity to get your eyes closer to the camera, because then you get a better picture of who you are and what you're trying to convey. One thing that really stands out for me, it was a long time ago, I was guest starring on Joe Forrester with Lloyd Bridges. And he was a beat cop on the beat, and I was playing a cop on the beat. And we were doing a scene. The camera was to the right of us, and it was a tracking shot. So the director, told me, just make sure you're a little ahead of him, to me, because I was on the outside and he was on the inside, which favors me basically, because the focus is on the guy and I'm the one talking and looking back to him. What he did was, it was just amazing. And, I could have been flustered, like I was a young actor, but I was guest starring, I knew what I was supposed to be doing. While he placed his left shoulder behind my right shoulder, and he was basically pushing me as the scene was going on.
This was Lloyd Bridges.
Lloyd Bridges, and now Lloyd Bridges is a little taller than I am, of course. But what a guy! I mean, he was just so into it, and he was pushing me, and I felt, whoa! I could feel him pushing me along. I'm saying all this dialogue at the same time, and I'm realizing all of this is happening. There's the camera, and you can't look at the camera, of course, because it's just taking in the scene, and I'm looking up at him and I'm feeling his shoulder, and there's a power, there's a moment of, damn, this is incredible. This is something I'm learning right now. He's keeping the scene going so we don't have to do it again. And I go, wow, that was powerful. And that always stayed with me. And one thing that I've learned too, as an actor and a young actor, is that every actor you work with is an equal. They're no more famous than you are. They're no whatever. You cannot look at them as famous people. They're your peer. You're working. You're bringing this project to life, and you're infusing it with your energy. I worked with Robert Mitchum. And of course, I grew up with Robert Mitchum, and oh my goodness, he was like, that's the guy. That's the power that he exudes on screen, and he's just so
He scared
easy.
me when I was a little kid.
Oh, well, if you saw that movie, yeah. But here I am in a scene with Robert Mitchum. I'm starring in a movie with him and Jim Mitchum and John Mitchum, the whole family. But I'm dealing with Robert Mitchum face to face, and I have a powerful scene with this man. And there he is, and he's looking back at me. We're doing this thing. It was like, wow, this is what it's about. And you're watching a professional at work, and you're a professional working with the professional. You're catapulted into something different. I mean, I was almost outside of my body watching the scene. I mean, that's how crazy I felt. And that's happened to me several times, by the way. I'm in the scene. I know it. I know I'm there. But I'm outside of myself.
Yes.
I'm outside of myself watching it and making sure I'm going where I'm going and doing the right thing. It's exalting. Is that the right word? It's being in the moment and allowing yourself. I never memorize cues. I don't know what you're going to say. And I don't wait for you to stop. I mean, I don't even know when you're going to stop. I just know I'm in the moment and I feel it. And your emotion is
You're moving in the organic.
exactly. But
flow of it.
your emotions, your words are bringing me into the scene, and I'm reacting. And that's the key word. We're reactors. It's just so powerful when it can happen that way. And when I was working with Anthony Quinn, as a young actor, you find yourself at that time He was a big guy. Just as a human being, you live through watching movies and so forth, and he's bigger than life, and he was that way. You talk about Brando. Well, he had his own. Oh, okay. I was in a scene, and I had my parents in the scene, and he has to come up to me. I'm the bad kid in the show, but I'm a young kid, and my parents are supposedly in this thing, and he comes up and he says, "Hey," I'm looking at him, and he's bobbing in my light, my key light.
Yes.
We're actors. We know what a key light is, and I'm trying to, but I'm a new actor. So director yells, "Cut!" The director is Paul Henry, now Voyager,
Okay.
Casablanca, and we're in the same agency, so we were packaged.
Wow.
We were packaged at the time. And now he's directing, and I'm there. I tell Paul, he's going in and out of my key light. And Anthony Quinn goes, "You don't worry about your key light." And he's boom, boom, boom. "You don't worry about your key light. You worry about that light that's in there. You do good." And he walks away, and he's sitting down in the chair. He goes, and Paul Henry's like, Richard, it's okay. We'll fix the light." And so, oh my God, what did I do? But I didn't know. I mean, I just felt, and then he said, rightfully so, the cinematographer takes care of that. You don't worry about that. We're here to protect you. I go, oh my goodness. But that was the young actor in me that, found himself with this icon of a man, actor, human being that was bigger than life. Boom, right in front of you. And you think you're doing the right thing because you're bobbing, you can't protect yourself. But that's stage work, because that's what I learned off of it. And that's when I worked with Henry Darrow, and that for the first time on that show. And Henry, of course, I knew who he was and so forth. I'm sitting there waiting for the scene to start up again. And off camera, I see Henry off there going. And I'm looking around. I said, "Well, who is he looking at?" And I'm looking at him. And I go, "Holy moly, he must be me." There was that method element. He's the cop, and I'm the culprit. I'm the bad guy, and he's coming, and he's building up to the scene. And I was not a method actor. I've never been a method actor, so I didn't know what the heck he was doing. And years later, I was working with Head Start parents. And I put a panel together, and I told this story, and he was on the panel because I invited him to be there. He cracked up, and he could not believe it. He says, yeah, I remember. But that was him, an actor,
That's his
preparing.
process.
Yeah, he was
his
preparing.
process.
But I was this young actor not knowing, my thing from a hole in the ground, and I was like, what did I do? Eventually I became aware of what was happening, because then in the scene, all of a sudden, there he was, right in my face. But then again, as a young actor, I had to pull back and say, okay, you do your thing, I'll do my thing. And that's what happens because you're in character.
You know yourself.
Exactly. Yes. And you can't be intimidated by anybody. Because I've heard so many times where you go to an audition and you'll have actors that keep talking to you while you're auditioning, and they keep you off balance, and people say that that's what they're doing. So they're not doing that. They're just nervous, and they don't know what to do.
No, sometimes they are doing that
on purpose.
Sometimes they're playing mind games. I think it's something we're not taught in acting classes, how to prepare in a waiting room. You shouldn't talk to anybody. I think you should be in your script, working in your script, and when you're done, you can wait for that person outside and then have a conversation.
Absolutely.
But you give power away when you start getting into small chatting about.
Well, you're not focused.
Yeah,
so by the time you go inside, and then you've got to get back into it, you're not there.
Right, and then you hate yourself. Then you want to beat
blame
yourself.
it on other people.
Yeah, it's like, no, that's your job, is to prepare. Make sure you come into that waiting area and have your head in the game, waiting for your shot. And you can talk all you want to afterwards, but to really focus on that. And I think that's something young actors don't always know. And when older actors do that, they're trying to psych out the competition.
Well,
I'm just saying.
It might be. I never, nobody ever bothered me. You know, even though they talked to me and so forth, I never get rattled. But there is one thing that I used to do to myself, and I think young actors, this comes with the territory. When you don't get the job after auditioning and you feel you did a great audition and you didn't get it, you keep beating yourself up for days. What did I do wrong? Why? What did I do? I was right for it. And then you see who got it, and you go, oh, They're a little heavier, they're a little taller, they're this and that. So it was an aesthetic thing. It had
Right,
nothing to do
right.
with you.
They
So
were-
after a while, you start to realize you don't beat yourself up. You go in, you do your part, your best, and then you walk away from it and you let it go.
Yes.
You just take a deep breath and walk out. Yeah.
What would you recommend for young actors out there who want to get in the business? What would your advice be to them?
Stay home. Go to your community theater where you live. Find out if this is what you really want. The fundamentals of acting are in theater. I don't care what anybody says. You have to know what the stage is. Once you find that geographical area, downstage, upstage right, upstage left, etc., you start to get a feel for what it means to create that world. And I keep telling them, Hollywood, you'll get there. But Hollywood is full of dreamers, full of people that are they're not serious. They want to be famous. And that's different than being an actor. An actor is someone who wants to interpret, who wants to take the written word and bring it to life with the help of a director, with the help of other actors. And I tell them, stay home. Don't come here and find yourself getting hurt and being involved with the wrong crowd. Start at home. Get that going. They need you there. Once you start doing the classics or you start doing theater, then you might decide you want to write. You might want to direct. You might want to do something different. Then you might find that there are film enthusiasts there that will help you. That to me is more important than coming to a new place and spending your money and finding yourself on the street with a difficult row to hoe, so to speak.
What do you think Latinos on a whole need to do to change our condition in front of the camera?
I think they have to leave the notion behind that they have to be something they're not. When I got to this town, everybody wanted to be James Dean. Or Marlon Brando, because that they wanted to emulate. They thought that was, you have to be yourself. And we are so rich in culture, language. When you project that will make the difference. That makes the difference as to who you are and how you're being perceived. And on the whole, many Latinos lose that because they want to be something they're not.
And how can Latinos who are not in the business support Latinos who are in the business?
What it comes to, the audience has a responsibility. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sylvester Stallone, they're great action heroes and so forth. But, they have to start looking at who's out there that looks like them, who's out there that is telling their story, and not to just say, I want more Latinos, I want to, no, if you want that, then support those people. Go see plays in your community, watch the movies, and after you watch the movies, send the studio a little note. Hey, I really like that guy is terrific, this and that and so forth. But don't say things that are negative right now. We don't need it. We need positive,
good Yelp reports.
Yelp for acting.
That's
yes,
right. That's right. And blasting social media, lovely support. Go out there and...
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Most people don't realize. You can say it in your head, I like that guy. But when you put it in writing, a studio, a network, that constitutes 10,000 letters.
Yes.
Each one of those.
And posts do too.
Yes, exactly.
Online
exactly.
posting.
Yes,
that makes a difference. And the studio does pay attention. That's how things go viral.
If you're watching this and you watch me, tell Lydia you loved it and you want to see me back, because that's important. She'll call me back and I'll make some more money. Huh? Well, not money. More coffee.
I wish I had, millions of dollars to celebrate you.
I was just going to say, checks in the mail, yeah?
Yes, when I hit that lotto, you'll get a check. You will get a big check. So just keep praying, put out the candles for me.
Well, let's hope ABC, CBS, NBC, or one of those Hulu or whatever are going to pick up your shows.
Let's get it going.
Absolutely.
But I just want to thank you so much, because you have been so influential in my life on a lot of levels, and your generosity. Not just for me, but other actors. I got to receive it, but I also saw that you gave it to other actors. And I just want to say thank you, Richard. Thank you for loving on us. Thank you for being a good papa to the community, and for giving us the Latin Theater Club online for us to be able to help each other. Because even though you're not acting at the moment, you still are very involved in the community. You're still very involved in putting people together, and the Latino Theater Club has been strong. It's it's on the internet for those of you who may not live in Hollywood but you want to be part of the community. Go ahead into Facebook, Latino Theater Club, and it's just a phenomenal place of support for Latino actors.
Well, I started that with actress Maria Richwine.
Yes.
But online she's Maria Luna.
Yes.
She was the lead in the Buddy Holly story years ago. Wonderful lady. And
Wonderful actress.
Yes, and the idea was to get groups to go support plays, movies, and so forth. We faltered a little bit. That's the way we started, and it was exciting. But people have their own lives. But it also turned into how we can support the community through the internet, and it's working. Yeah, we're over 5,000 members now and growing.
So thank you.
Thank you.
That's
No.
you. And
What you're doing is making the difference. Because this is our legacy. You're talking to people who have contributed. You're talking to people who actually did the walk and the talk. We're getting to know who we are based on who they are.
Yes, we will continue to do that. Just thank you. Thank you for your spirit. Thank you for just showing Latinos that we could make a difference and we don't have to do it anybody else's way. We can get our own monies, we can get our own productions, and we can do it. We just have to continue to move our train forward and not expect somebody to do it for us.
Yes, exactly.
So thank you, Richard. I love you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for doing it.
Thank you. Mwah!